Okay, let's say a few words about the project. I didn't cover, if I did cover coefficient of variation, I may have covered it in a very short period of time. So you have to do coefficient of variation on this first page, and it's just, the coefficient of variation is just the standard deviation divided by the mean. So just divide that out. Oh, there they come. I got something for you. I think I got one over here too. There we go. And Jackson, I've got yours, some homework here. And I've got some for Miranda too, but I'll get it to you after class. So the coefficient of variation is just the standard deviation divided by the mean. Don't forget to turn in the, the stuff on the second page, which is the normal distribution. So these you'll have to actually bring to me in person. And then also the final thing is your box plot, which you use Q1, Q2, and Q3, and the minimum maximum. So you'll send me an email with the spreadsheet, and you'll turn this in with everything filled out. So did you figure out how to do those, or? Okay.
Looks right?
Yes. Yep, looks good. Yeah, I did. But let me. Why don't you look through them? Look through that pile, so you can do that while I'm teaching the class. Okay, got another one for Laramie. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to continue on with talking about installment loans. I told you I was going to show you how you do this in a spreadsheet, and it's basically the same thing that I did by hand. It's just generating the entire table, because once you do the first complete the first row, the rest of it is pretty much default. And I think there's a video that talks about the car payment example. If not, I'll put it up there. So what I'm going to do now, there'll be a video that you can watch later. So don't try to, don't worry if you're like, I didn't catch everything you did, because I will talk about it. Okay, so I need to open up a spreadsheet here. And I need to share it. So what I'm going to try to do is duplicate what I did the other day by hand in the spreadsheet. So my first column was month, second column was payment, third column was principal, the fourth column was interest, the fifth column was total interest, the last column was balance. And so we start with month 0, and then we go to month 1, and we go as long as the car loan was, which, let's see what it was. It was, here's the details. It was, I'll have to go back a couple of pages here, I think. Well, maybe I didn't do it. Okay. It was, I'll figure it out here. It was 6 years and 6.5% interest, $20,000. Okay, so let's go back here. So let's write those in so I don't forget. I'm just going to put those in my top line. So we'll have purchase price. First price was $20,000. The interest was 6.5%. Months, 72 months, 6 years. Okay. So I have to copy this down until I have 72 months. And so I got to go one more. 72. Okay. So that's the monthly stuff. Now, my payment was $336.20. So that's going to be the same for every month. So I'll do it for the first 2 months just to, like that. Okay. Now, the interest, well, first I'll put the balance in here. So the balance is $20,000. So I'll just copy this number into there. So you start with $20,000. For the first month, the interest was equal to the balance times the interest rate divided by 100. And let me change this to has the dollar signs in, so it always uses that cell. So that's the interest rate divided by 100 to convert it to a decimal, and divide by 12 to get monthly interest rate. So the last three terms are the monthly interest rate in the decimal form. So you get $108.33. Now, you make a payment, so the amount that you pay beyond the interest, it goes towards your principal. So this cell is the payment minus the interest, which is $227.87. The total interest right now is going to just be the initial interest. And then my new balance is equal to my old balance minus my principal. So the extra I pay, more than the interest, I get to reduce the balance. And I think I can copy everything down. Yeah, it's gonna require me to copy this payment all the way down to the bottom. So let me do that. So my payment stays the same for the whole thing. Okay. Now I'll go back up here. So so the other ones I'm copying the formulas. And where there's dollar signs, it uses these values all the time. When there's no dollar signs, it increments it. So for example, my interest here is cell F5, which is my new balance, times D $1, which means it always goes to this cell, 6.5%. And divided by 100 divided by 12. So it updates one of them, and the other one it keeps fixed no matter where I copy it. And the final thing I need to do is that my total interest is my previous interest plus my new interest. So that's my total interest. So I'm adding these two cells. And now I've got it so it'll increment. So now all I have to do is just copy the whole thing down for the whole 72 months, and I should get to a balance of close to 0 at the end, which I do. I've got 12 cents. Okay, so that's close enough. I don't think they're going to worry about 12 cents. Looks like I paid 12 cents too much out of 20,000 some dollars. That's not any big deal. And that's just because I have to round my payment off to cents. So you're always going to be a little bit off at the end. So that's basically the rest of the calculation. We did it in a table. We did the first couple of rows, and the rest of it is just copying stuff. So again, what happens, your payment stays constant, so you know what to count on. As you pay the principal, that reduces the balance each time you make a payment. Because the balance goes down each month, the amount that you have to pay towards interest becomes less. That means the amount that you get to pay towards principal becomes larger. And as you see, as I go down the payment schedule, the interest rate, the amount I'm paying for interest becomes less. So you can see it goes 85, down to $78. This is getting bigger. By the time you get to the end, the amount of interest you're paying is negligible. You're paying the last payment. You're paying $1.81 in interest and $334 in principal. And your next to last payment, your balance is going to be the payment plus the interest from that last thing. And the goal is, of course, to get it down to 0 at the end. Now, how did I know? Where do you get the $336.20? Well, you could pick a number and just keep changing the payment number until you get to a balance of 0. That would be kind of like trial and error. There's a formula that's fairly complicated that actually would tell you, given the principal the initial purchase price, the interest rate, and the number of periods, it calculates it. But it's fairly complicated, so I'm not going to worry about it. But that's how it works. So, and then you get down to the bottom. You've paid $4,206 in interest, $20,000 in principal, and if I add all these principal calculations, add all these up, it'll add up to $20,000. And if I add all these up, it adds up to 4206.28. Okay, so that's that. It's not a real super difficult calculation. It's just a lot of calculations, which, as I said before, is what spreadsheets do. They're great at doing that kind of stuff. Now, Mr. Clark there may have some comments about this because he worked for a car dealership, so we'll see what his opinion is. So I got this off the internet. The most common car financing scam, packed payments. It says, a scam you're likely to encounter if you finance through a dealer is called the packed payment scam. This is when an auto dealer increases your monthly auto loan payment to include back-end products such as extended warranty without you realizing it. They're essentially backpacking a bunch of expensive products into your loan, and since you're only seeing the monthly payment, you may not realize how much extra you're paying for those items. So it does happen. And that's why I said a lot of times when you go buy a car, they'll say, what monthly payment can you afford? And then you go to sign the papers, and I think nowadays it's more transparent. But what they would do is they'd sell you an extended warranty. What is an extended warranty? Do you know it, Trey? Right. Yeah, I mean, each car has a standard warranty. The drivetrain's guaranteed for this long, and the blah blah. There's different things depending upon different parts of the car, and that's included with your purchase price. Now, say your engine is warranted for 10 years. What if you wanted to make sure if there was a problem within 15 years? So they would charge you an additional amount so that your warranty would be good for 15 years instead of 10 years. Typically, those extended warranties are not a great deal. And they may not, in the older days, and maybe they still do, they would include those things and kind of just try to not tell you about them. Things like, another thing is, they might treat your upholstery with some kind of stain-resistant stuff. You're like, oh yeah, that'd be great because I might spill something in my car, but they're going to charge you $300 for something that costs them $50. So a lot of times there are these add-on things that they include in the payment, and so you have to be careful about that. Pretty much, I don't buy anything. I just pay for the car. I just don't think I've never bought an extended warranty on anything, and I have not regretted it yet. So at least from my experience. Now, if you're one of the few people that actually uses it, you're probably happy, but generally they're not that great a deal. So be careful about that. And that's why I say when you go to a car dealer, what you want to do is you want to, go ahead of time, see how much approximately how much it's going to cost, how much you have for a down payment, take the difference, that's your loan, go to the internet, see what the car payment should be based on the length of the loan, and go from there. Go there as an educated consumer. Okay, here's another one, title loans. Get your title back with Title Max. Does anybody know anything about title loans? Do you know what title loans? Okay. So what those are, they are short-term loans that use your car as collateral. So what you do is, say you need $2,000, and typically you have to have paid off your car. You can't have a lien on your car. Lien means a loan. So you can't owe money on your car. And they'll give you, say if your car's worth $5,000, they might give you a $3,000 loan. And you give them the car title. So when you pay back the loan, they'll give you your car title back. That's why it says get your title back with Title Max. You get it back because you gave it to them in the first place. Now, if you don't pay off the loan, then they take your car, and now you have no car. Okay, so that's not very good. The reason they're willing to lend you the money is they have collateral, and it's your car. It's not. They're not giving you money to buy a new car. They're taking your car as collateral so that if you default on your loan, that they'll have your car. So it's very risky in that sense. If you really need money, maybe that's something you want to do, but you want to avoid that like the plague as far as title loans. Because one thing is the risk of losing your car is pretty serious, and secondly is that the interest rates that they charge are fairly high anyway. So it's so here's this guy's comment. Yep, they take away your car first. Since your car is broke, it won't have much value. They will deduct what your car is worth from your car loan and chase you for the remaining amount. Most likely, so I guess you can borrow as much as your car's equity you have in the car. Most likely, they'll sell your loan to a debt collecting company, and you'll deal with them instead. It'll show up in your credit report as a default. Your credit score will take a hit, and most likely you won't be able to take out a new car loan or lease a car. So it's not a thing you should try. It's not as nice as the commercials make it out to be. Okay, the last thing in this section is about credit cards, and I think I asked you guys, what do you guys have credit cards or not? So the question is, how do they figure out how much interest they charge you every month? That's the thing. I mean, if credit cards didn't charge interest, then they would be great. Okay, but of course they do charge interest. And I'm going to show you. These are from my credit card statement. I didn't do everything. So these are actual words from an actual bill. So I'm not making this stuff up. Okay. This is from my last month's credit. So in the fine print, it says the interest charges accrue and are compounded on a daily basis. To determine the interest charges, we multiply each balance subject to interest rate by its applicable daily periodic rate. So what that means is they're going to charge you on a daily basis, and they take the yearly interest rate and they divide by the number of days in the year. So if your interest rate's 10%, your daily rate is 10% divided by 365. That's your daily rate. Okay. And that result is multiplied by the number of days in the billing cycle, so that you have an average daily balance for your credit card, and they multiply that by the appropriate rate. And the good thing about credit cards, if you pay off the balance, you don't pay any interest. So if you use your credit card and you pay your balance, you pay everything off, even though you've been theoretically borrowing money for 20 days or 30 days, they don't charge you for that. It's only when you don't pay it the first time and you establish a balance after not paying it. Now, after that fact, you keep paying on the balance that you have. And I think if you make new charges, they'll start charging you on that as well. So they don't give you a grace period. Once you start having a balance on your credit card, then you're going to start paying interest. The only time I haven't paid off the interest on my credit card is when I forgot. And that was a real pain in the neck because it was, it wasn't that much. But so there's this thing called average daily balance, which we'll talk about, multiplied by the appropriate charges. So this goes into average daily balance method, which is what we're going to talk about in class. So it's not, this is the way that people calculate how much interest you owe after every month. So we'll come back to that. This is my credit card bill. So Netflix, $5.25. That's my $2 movies a month plan. This was my cousin in England is getting her head shaved for charity. So that was just 40 years old. She's 40 years old. She's going to get her head shaved. So I gave $25, 20 pounds. Here's my phone bill, $104.38 from Verizon. My New York Times online subscription. So these are my charges throughout the month. So that's what a credit card bill looks like. And you go through and make sure that everything's valid. And inside the credit card bill, they give you the annual percentage rates, which is about 15%. So that's the interest rate they charge, which is reasonably high, but it's probably not as high as other people because I have a good credit rating. And if you want to get cash advances, that's almost 20.5%. So you don't really want to use your credit card for cash advances. You would use your debit card, hopefully. If you need it, you got it. There's no other choice. But the interest rate for cash advances are pretty high percentage, and that's your annual percentage rate. So there's my new balance, $522.03. You have to pay a minimum amount every month. It's not dependent upon how much you have owing. There's just a minimum amount, which for me is $25. So I've got to pay at least $25. If I forget to pay my credit card, then there will be a penalty, a late fee of up to $37 if I forget to pay. Plus, they may increase your interest rate up to 30%. So that's really high. So you at least want to pay the minimum amount. Ideally, you want to pay it all off so you don't have to ever pay interest. So that's the, and interestingly enough, they tell you, it says if you make no additional charges using this card and each month you pay the minimum amount, $25, it'll take you 2 years to pay off the balance of 500 and whatever my balance was, 520 something. And you'll end up paying around $600. So you pay the balance plus the interest is about $600. So I guess they let you know what's the worst case scenario as far as paying off the credit card bill, $25 a month. So that's something else. And that's it. So that's the gist of the credit card bill. They tell you how they calculate the average balance and the interest. You get a list of your charges, which you need to check, make sure nothing strange is going on. They tell you how much your interest rates are. They talk about your minimum payment that you have to make, or they're going to penalize you. And if you want to pay off your debt. Now, I don't know what happens if you had a bigger bill and $25 wouldn't cover the interest for a month. This may say something like, some higher payment. It'll take 2 years to pay it off. I don't know. I'm never going to get in that situation, so I won't know what the answer is there. Okay. So let's look at how this thing works. So let's put this on one page. So this is kind of and I'm going to erase these values because we're going to go through the calculation here. Oh, I can't do that. Yeah, I need to just erase this row right here. Oops, that didn't work either. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to erase the row that has the Let me zoom out a little bit so I can get a better idea. There we go. That's what I wanted to do there. Okay, I think I've gotten to a point. Erase all that stuff. We'll go through it. Put that on one page. Okay, so what I have is a date. This is my initial credit card balance. I didn't pay it off completely. My billing starts on the 17th of the month. I make a transaction, so what I'm doing here is when it's positive, it means I'm getting money back, like I'm getting a return. So I've returned something, I've gotten credit. Here, this is I'm buying something. I don't have anything that says where it's from because just look at the numbers. So negative is taking money out, or actually adding. Let me make sure which one's which here. Trying to remember which one was the. Yeah, I think the negative is when I'm getting money back, and the positive is when I am buying something. So the first thing is just like filling out a checking account, is you just do the entries like you would normally do. So let me get my calculator. So I bought something. So at that point, my balance that I owe is greater. So now I owe $998.17. And then the next thing is I subtract. So I got a credit here. I return something to Target. So that's $972.76. I bought something that was $31.82. So that's add $31.82 to the. So now I owe $1,004.58, and then I make some kind of payment here, so I'm decreasing the balance, $896.58, and okay, I'm getting some credit again here for something, so I'm going to reduce the balance, $825.44. Then I'm buying something, so I buy something for $110. So my balance is back up to $935.44. And then I do another $100, and I get $1,035.44. And then I come around to the day here when I'm back to my original. This is the end of the month, and that's where I pay. That's where I figure out what my interest is. So I'm going to figure out what the interest is based upon what I've done so far. So again, I start with an initial amount that I owe. I go through various transactions that decrease or increase. Usually it's the I'm increasing the balance. I buy things more than I get it back. But now this column is this times that. So what I'm doing is I'm figuring out, taking the number of days times the balance for those 4 days. And when I multiply all these things together, the days times the balance, I'm going to get a total down here at the bottom. And I'm going to divide that by the total number of days in the month, which is 31, I think, in this case. And that'll give me my average daily balance. So the longer you have a certain balance, the more it counts towards the average daily balance for the entire period. So here I have 4 days at my initial balance. So I take 983.25 times 4. So these are just products. And what this is, it says this times that. So A times red times blue. So I get 3,000, and it's not dollars, it's really dollar days, I guess you would call it, if you looked at the units. Then we have a balance of 998.17. And looking at here, to get the 4 is there's 4 days between the 17th and the 21st. There's 2 days between here. That's where the 2 comes from. There's 4 days here. So these numbers are just the difference in the number of days between the balances. So I just do that. Just multiply those 2 columns together. And again, you can see this is where a spreadsheet would be nice to do all this stuff. But it's good to see it actually done manually. Again, I'm just multiplying that times that. Okay, so that gets me to the, and I'm not worried about the 1 day here. So if I add all these up, 3, 6, 8, 18, 22, 26, 28, now I'm getting 32 days, or it can't be 32 days in the month. Let's see what I got here. Let's do it again. 10, 14, 23, 25, 31. Okay, so it's 31 days. I somehow made a mistake there. So it's 31 days. So to get my average daily balance, I add all those numbers up in that one column. And just hold on just a second. I accidentally stuck my hand on the power button on my tablet. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all these numbers together in that column. So 3106.32 plus 2806.32 plus 1650.88 plus 8069.22 plus 4018.32 plus 3891.04 plus, now we're going to move up a little bit here, 1996.34 plus 39.33. So the sum of all those values is 29,471.4, and to divide that by the number of days, which is 31. And so my average daily balance is $950.69. So that's, if you look at my list of numbers, you know, that looks like it's reasonable. $965, you know, half of them are going to be probably greater than that, and half are going to be less than that. So it's just basically an average, but it's a weighted average. It's weighted by the number of days that you are at that value. So it is a weighted average. Now that's the number that you use to calculate the interest. So to find the interest, to calculate the interest for that month, you take the average daily balance and multiply by the interest rate, which is, I don't know what my interest rate was. Did I give that? I'm just going to make it up. Let's say it's 15%. We had that. So you'd use 0.15. That's your yearly interest rate. So what we want to do is we need to take that and divide by 365. So that'll give me my daily interest rate, and then I multiply by the number of days, 31 days. So this is This is my average daily balance. This is my interest. This is my number of days. This is days per year. So that'll give me my daily interest rate multiplied by the number of days. That'll give me, so that reflects the fact that some months have 30 days, some have 31. Okay, so let's see what I get. Times 0.15 divided by 365 times 31, $12.11. Okay, so my interest is $12.11. So then what will happen is I go back here and my transaction is going to be plus $12.11. That's my interest. I don't worry about that in my calculation. I'm doing it on the first day, the last day, which is runs into the first day. So what I'll do is I'll add that to my previous balance. And $12 is less than my minimum payment, so I'm going to at least be staying ahead of the game. So that's my new balance. So the interest is calculated at the end of the month based on the average daily balance, the daily interest rate multiplied by the number of days in the month. Okay, so that's how it works. It's not rocket science again. It's just some reasonably simple calculations, and you'll have something. You'll have some homework problems that address that, which I think is what I have next, is some homework. There we go. Okay, yeah, the car payment example. So that's an assignment. What is the car payment example? I don't remember it, so I'll email that to you. Well, actually, the car payment example is using the spreadsheet. I don't think I have a credit card one that's spreadsheet, but the car payment example is a spreadsheet one, which I will find that for you and send you the assignment. And there's a video that goes along with that, and it's basically just what I did reasonably quickly, but you'll have time to absorb it all like you did the project. Yes.
So we're talking about credit cards, and this is your attendance question for this lecture. So there's something called secured credit cards. And so if you go to credit cards on Wikipedia, so look under Wikipedia for credit cards, and then there will be a section specifically talking about secured credit cards. So there's, just read the first two paragraphs and write me 2 sentences about what it means to have a secured credit card relative to just a normal credit card.
I'm glad you're back. I've missed you. It's not the same. Harley's not here. I was thinking, did I do something to make her mad? Okay, so there's section 1 homework. That I don't know. You'll have to look it up in the book. Okay, so it's not in your book, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because it's important. Credit score. You've seen commercials about that as well. And you can get your credit score once a year for free. So you don't have to pay to get your credit score. I did mine most recently through Credit Karma. I think that's what I was. You do have to give them some information to verify that it's you. typically they ask you questions like, which they give you like a multiple choice quiz. What bank do you have your credit card with? Do you have a mortgage with any of these banks? Something like that. What's the last 4 digits of your Social Security number? They don't ask you your entire Social Security number, but they do ask you something. So they verify it's you, and then you look at it and you get a number. And the credit score is used by businesses to determine whether to give you credit or not. So if you go to buy a car and you want a loan, or you go to a bank and you want a loan, they'll look up your credit score. So not only can you look up your credit score, but businesses can look up your credit score. And the higher your credit score is, the more credit worthy you are, meaning that you're either going to have a chance of getting a loan versus not getting a loan, or if you get a loan, you might get a better interest rate because you're showing that you are a responsible person when it comes to credit. So you want a high credit score. So how do you get a high credit score? So I'll write down my hints or recommendations for getting a high credit score. Okay, the first one is to have a credit card. It's kind of like, which is the chicken and which is the egg. It's kind of like when I played basketball in high school. So I moved from Ohio to Virginia between my sophomore and junior year in high school. So you're coming into a program where people have a history. I didn't have any history. So I did make the basketball team. But I remember, I think it was after I graduated and I was kind of annoyed that I didn't get to play as much. So I asked the coach, hey, why didn't I get to play more? Well, it's because you didn't have any playing time. It was like, I didn't know how you were going to play, so I couldn't play it. Well, I can't play unless you play. It's like a check. I can't show you how I'm playing if you don't let me play. It was kind of stupid. So there was a league after high school. And so I played for a team, and the coach was a referee for that league. And he said to me, he says, if I know you were that good, I would have let you play more, because I actually played. It was kind of ironic, So I finally got to play, and he was like, hey, you're actually pretty good. But he had certain people he'd been used to, so it was kind of like, okay. So have a credit card. So you might have to, I don't know how hard it is to get a credit card these days, so I'm just based it on my children. You can get a credit card with a low credit limit. And so what you do is you use your credit card and then you pay it off every month. And so that establishes you as a history of credit, of paying off stuff when you owe it. So if you own a home, say when you get out and on your own, paying your rent on time, paying your cable bill, just paying your bills on time. Those all go into, somehow they get that information, and that goes into your credit score. That's basically what it is. You just have to have a history of paying off bills. And credit cards are, so that's why even just a credit card with a small balance, allowable, credit limit is good, because it's going to then, when you want to get a more credit, extend your line of credit, then you're more likely to get that. So you may have a credit card and you want to go from $400 to $1,000. And so you may request that. And they'll look at your credit history, they'll look at your credit report, and decide whether they think you're a risk or not. Right now my credit card has a $15,000 credit limit on it, which I never use, but it's still there because I have established and that's one card. I could probably, theoretically, with 3 credit cards, I could, charge $40,000 on my credit card, which I'm not going to do. And they haven't increased it for a while. They probably just said you're never going to use it. So that's the general idea behind a credit score. And there are things that you can, the thing is you just want to start off with a good record and just build upon that. It's like a name, a reputation. Build on your reputation, but you have to do things. So basically, have a credit card and pay in full. Okay. But the other one is not too many credit cards. Then you think he wants to charge everything. So not too many credit cards. So if you get, sometimes you go into shops and they'll say, hey, why don't you open a credit card because you can get a discount. And that's okay for 1 or 2 places. But if you do that at 10 or 20 places, they think you're trying to get away with something and charge more than you're really able to do. So don't use too many credit cards. Pay other bills on time. And it doesn't just apply to getting credit at some point, like buying a car. It also applies to getting an apartment. When my daughter moved to New York City, small apartments were $2,000 a month. So you needed a certain amount of income to be able to afford that. They weren't going to rent you a house or rent you a place unless they knew that you could afford it. Well, at the time, she was not working. Her husband had gotten a job, and she was going along and looking for a job. On his salary alone, they would not rent them the apartment. So I had to be like a co-signer on the rental thing. So I had to send them a tax return, showed my income. They ran a did a credit report test, and they came back and they approved us. They actually said, the person said, your dad and your credit scores are combined are one of the best credit scores I've ever seen. So she got the apartment. The other thing is even jobs. People will look at your credit score for a job because they're looking to see whether you're a responsible person. So it goes beyond just getting you a better interest rate or better terms on a loan. It can be, is that fair to do that? That's another questionable thing. So that's what credit score is. Okay. I'm going to show you this, and we'll probably come back to it later, but I wanted to share it with you. So let's see, here we go. Open. Actually, recent. So what I did was I went online and saw if there were any free Excel files that looked at retirement. So this was pretty good, I thought. So I thought I'd just go through the items and then we'll come back to them later. This is basically saying, can I afford to retire? Looking ahead. And it's not just for people who are 50 years old. If you're thinking about retirement when you're 50 and not at 25, you've waited too long. So what you do is you put in your current age, the age you want to retire, the years to pay out. What that does is it assumes you guess how old you're going to be when you die, which is, it's part of life. So if you retire at 65, 25 years, you'll be 90 years old. Now, is the average lifespan 90 years old? No, but you can't plan on average. You always have to plan for more than average. So they figured 90 years old, that's probably safe. The problem with, and this is all funding yourself, so this means you have to save more than if you lived to 70. If you knew you were going to die at 75, you wouldn't have you wouldn't have to go out so far. You just leave more money to your kids. So that's the advantage of this thing. And this number 40 is the years that you have between your current age and the time you retire. So that's 40 years to invest. So those are the, okay. Then they have a entry for return during accumulation. What that means is while you're working, while you're accumulating your savings. So they're saying 6% return on your investment, which is fairly conservative. Why is that greater than when you retire? Because typically when you retire, you're not as willing to be as risky about your money. You don't want to do risky, and you only have 10 years. You're taking it out over a shorter period of time than you accumulated it. So you tend to have a lower return. You choose to investments that have a lower return, which are safer after you retire. Then you also have to put in inflation. Unfortunately, that's a reality that is not nice. But so they're putting 3%, which is a little high. So they're being conservative. Having these numbers low is conservative, and having this high is conservative. This is your annual salary at $50,000 a year, which is a pretty good salary. And they're saying 2% increase in salary, which is less than inflation. You'd most likely like to have that, but you can't. That doesn't always happen. Okay, then here's where you put your money in. So you're saving money. Their default is 10% of your salary. Now, we'll talk more about 401ks and other investment options, but a lot of companies will match your contributions up to a certain percent of your salary. Talking to Mr. Sass and looking online, currently it's about 6%. So if you save 6% of your salary, a lot of companies will match that. So if you, in the case of $50,000, let's put 6% in there. That's $3,000 a year. So if you match, the company matches it 100%, that means they're going to match it dollar for dollar. That means you would save 12% a year of your income. 6% you would contribute, and 6% the company would contribute. And there's some maximum that that the employer max. There's some. So what this is saying, what percent of it am I saving, and what's the maximum that the employer? So in this case, it's 6%. So does that work out? So 6%, yeah, right. So 6% of 50,000 is 3,000. The company matches it. So you save a total of $6,000 a year, and as your salary increases, you'll save more each year because it's going to be a constant percentage. Okay. Now over here is the big calculation. So then you got to figure out how much money you need to retire. So typically, on the safe side, if you earn the same amount of retirement as you are when you're working, then that should be, you should think, okay, that should be enough. That should be okay. So they're by default. A lot of people say 80% of what you're making, because you don't have to, there are expenses that you don't have to pay when you're not working, like traveling to where you work, eating out lunch when you're at work, buying clothes that are appropriate for work. So there are certain expenses that you don't have in retirement that you would have in normal life. So they're, in this case, assuming the same value. The second one is if you have to adjust your $50,000 today at 3% inflation, which is in this spreadsheet, you'd have to be making $163,000 40 years later. That's a lot of money, It's so inflation can really play a big role in your calculations. And it says that you need $4 million to retire. Okay, which then you look at that and you're like, there's no way I'm ever going to make that much. Now this is said to fund your retirement 100%. So that's assuming that you get no Social Security, no pension, that you're only using your savings to retire, which is not usually the case. So what this is saying is right now we start at $25, 25 years, so we've saved $20,000. If you just took that $20,000 and stuck it in an account at 6%, When you retire 40 years later, you've got $206,000. We did that calculation. Remember if I put this amount of money in and I don't add anything to it, what's the amount after? My parents gave me $10,000. My grandparents gave me $10,000. What would that be worth in so many years? So that's what that calculation. This is this money plus the stuff I've contributed through my employer. So that's the savings. So it says I'm $2.8 million short. That's not too good. Okay, it's not all lost. Don't panic yet. Now, when you retire, you get, it says income retirement. Well, I thought when you retire, you don't make any money anymore, right? So where would your income come from when you retire? Pardon me? Depends on which company it is. So that's called a pension. So yes, you might. I have a pension. I'll have two pensions, one from Midwest Vaco, one from the Virginia Retirement System. Okay. My wife, she'll have a pension from the Virginia Retirement System because she's a teacher. So those are three pensions that we'll have. And then you have Social Security. Okay. So that is an income. Now I did a little calculation based on my experience. And say I'm earning $50,000 a year when I retire. Your Social Security will cover about 45% of your salary. It'll be about equal to about 45% of your salary. So if I take $50,000 and I multiply by 0.45, Social Security will be about $22,500 a year. About half, approximately half of what so I've got to make that other amount up, or this person's got to. Now, so here, the initial amount when I retire should be based more on this inflation-adjusted salary. So if Social Security is doing its job, which we don't know, you guys are in more trouble than I am, unfortunately. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in 45% of $163,000, just as so my Social Security should be $73,000. And it's adjusted for inflation, so I'll have this the same as inflation. Social Security gets adjusted by the Consumer Price Index, which is about inflation. So that's probably pretty good. So that's worth $1.8 million. Okay, so I'm making up the difference pretty quickly here. I'm still short $827,000. So how do I make up that difference? Well, if I have a pension plan, then that might help me. Or I might have to save more money. So if I go back over here, instead of saving 6% of my salary, if I save 10%, then I'm only short $423,000. Okay. I could, if I didn't need as much in retirement, let's say I only needed $50,000 instead of $73,000, then hey, that's still $1 million, isn't it? Maybe I was farther apart than I was. Okay. That seems weird. I didn't expect that. Anyway, I'm still short. Let me go back to where I was, because that seems like I'm worse shape, so I must have just read something wrong. Yeah, I think I missed a decimal point. Okay, so let's say $72,000. I can't remember exactly. Well, I wrote it in like $73,350. Oh, that's because I decreased the wrong thing. That's my income. If I salary during retirement, if instead of $50,000 in today's dollars, if I could live off 20% less, then hey, I'm only $11,000 short. So those are the kind of decisions you'd have to make. One is, okay, I need to save more of my income. Maybe I can live more frugally in my retirement. Um, the other big lever on accumulating money is the investments you put it in. So if I could choose an investment which gave me a better rate of return, so I go to this part of my spreadsheet, let's say I got 8% instead of 6%. And then I go back here. Now it tells me I'm $1 million ahead. So going from 6% to 8% return on my investment is a huge driver. So is 6% realistic, 8% realistic? Are they being too conservative? That's kind of some decisions you have to make. You have to, or with a financial, that's what a financial advisor is going to do if you ever have a professional. But most of the stuff you can actually do yourself. You just have to decide, what do I invest in stocks or bonds or cash or whatever it is, that's going to affect this number, and that number can make a huge difference. Let's say, for example, the stock market from 1900 to 1999 averaged about 11% or more per year. So if I put 11 in there, how much money am I going to have here? $4 million. Okay. That's a huge difference. Unfortunately, I think those days are over. So if your parents, your grandparents, they could save a lot less money, and because if they invested it in the stock market, they could retire pretty nicely without having to. But because of the fact, for various reasons, that the return on certain investments is lower now, then you have to save a much larger portion of your salary to make things safe. And it actually goes over here, and it has some disclaimers, and it says results are only rough estimates, largely because of the uncertainty of the rate of returns. That was the 6 versus 8 versus 11. Inflation, because we don't know what inflation is going to be. Your future salary, your willpower to continue saving, unexpected life events, and other assumptions. So there's a lot of variability. And so you might get lucky and inflation's low and the stock market's good and you don't have any huge costs in your life, and you may luck out. Or you may have the other side of the thing and you don't luck out, and you really can't predict. Life is uncertain. So luckily for me, I did this calculation last night. So I'll get Social Security, my wife will get Social Security, I'll have a pension for my SPACO, pension from the state, she'll have a pension from the state. And my salary in retirement is more than I'm making right now. So that's pretty good. So that makes me feel good. But anyway, we'll come back to this, but I just want to kind of give you an overall. So if you learn one thing out of this class, because what's important is, you have a general idea what's involved, what are the levers, and so when you actually have to make these decisions, it won't be completely foreign to you. And also, the calculations aren't that difficult. It's not rocket science. It's simple arithmetic, and you don't need some guy to con you as a financial advisor. You can do them yourself, and you can make reasonable decisions, or at least be prepared. It's like going to a car dealer with your, the distribution of prices in your area, and then you can be an informed consumer. Okay. So go to the next section. This one right here, section 3. There is only homework for the first 3 sections. And this section actually is very short. So it's called Truth in Lending. The basic idea of this section is that there are regulations unless Trump decides to stop the regulations that were put in specifically in place so that you knew the true cost of borrowing money, rather than some smokescreen, some sleight of hand that you thought you were getting a good deal and you weren't, or you really didn't know what it is. So one of the biggest things is this annual percentage rate. If you remember my credit card statement, it says the annual percentage rate is 15.99%. 20 years ago, if you had a credit card, they may not have put that on your statement, but now it's law. So why would somebody not want to put that on there? If you have it on there now, why would you stop regulations that tell you to put it on there? Anybody? What's the negative of knowing what your true interest rate is? What's that? Yeah, I mean, that's the only negative is that some crook can't swindle you. So why would anybody? And I'm not saying they're getting rid of this law, but you have to be careful about sometimes, you know, regulations, that's bad. But, you know, in this case, it's a regulation, yeah. It does good. The only bad thing it does is if you're a criminal, it makes it harder for you to cheat somebody. Okay, so that's basically what the annual percentage rate. It gives you a true annual interest rate that they're charging, and therefore you can compare different plans or different companies. They're all on the same basis. They're not, one's telling you one thing and the other's telling you another, and it's not the same basis. You think this is a better deal, but it's not really a better deal. So it's a matter of putting interest values on a common platform. Also, sometimes you want to pay off a loan early, and I'm not sure how prevalent this is, because everything that I've had experience with is if I want to pay off my loan early, there's no penalty. At some point, they used to. It's kind of like when you go on a phone plan, and you would quit your phone plan early, and you would have a early termination fee. They used to have those with loans, but I don't really know if they have those anymore. But if they do, they have to be very specific about that, because before you could pay off your loan early, but it would actually cost you more, so because of the penalties. Okay, so they have to do that as well, to tell you if there's any penalties for paying off early. Now there's this table in the section that I don't really think you need. I'm going to ignore that, so we're not even going to do that. So there's not a whole lot in this section. I think the gist of it is I was using this as an example, again, of just showing the payment schedule for a car. And you may at some point, you know, if you came into some, like a credit or a tax refund, you might like say, I'm just going to pay off my car loan because I've had the money. I don't have to worry about a car loan. As I said, in the old days, I think you did have to worry about early payment because the bank's not getting that interest. They're losing money, and so there is a downside for you paying it off early from the bank's perspective, and they wanted to recoup some of their costs. But again, because everything's computerized nowadays, there isn't really any work associated with it. Back in the old days, you might have to have some guy in the back room, some accountant, work out everything and say, well, that's, you know, and that costs them money, and they don't like that, so they want to charge you. But so I'm just going to decide not to say anything about it all. I've made an executive decision. I don't think I'm even going to assign any homework from that section. So we're just having homework for the first two sections. Okay. So what we'll talk about next time is we will talk about more specifically about the different types of investments that you can make, And then we'll talk about IRAs and 401ks and the advantages and disadvantages of those investment strategies. Now you can turn in your project late. You're just going to lose a little bit of points. So don't think if I don't get it in at midnight tonight, I'm going to get a 0. I'm not that. I don't do that. But if you turn it in later than midnight, and if you haven't gotten this done, you can turn that in tomorrow without a penalty. But the pardon me? Yeah. So keep turning it in. There will be a small penalty, but not a significant penalty for getting